As Walter drove down the street to his home, Sheriff Evans took out his weapon and fired at Walter as his family looked on in horror. Evans missed Walter when he fired, but he fired over the heads of Walter's children. Sally screamed out and rushed to her kids. Walter quickly got out of his truck and began to run for the back of his home. That's when Evans fired at Walter again, several more times. Walter was struck and he fell to the ground. But Evans was not done yet. He and Foster went up to Walter as he lay bleeding on the ground. They took out their pistols and they beat Walter in his head. They beat him severely. They beat him in front of his wife, his children, his family, and his neighbors. They didn't care that everyone saw what they were doing. This was 1942 in the Jim Crow South in Alabama, and they could do what they wanted to a black person whenever they wanted. They were the law. They beat Walter in the head so severely that he lost consciousness. After beating Walter, they dragged his battered body back to his own truck. They made his neighbor, a man named Horace Davis, put Walter in the back seat. Foster then drove Walter's body back to the filling station where he worked and told his brother, Joe Gunn, to take him to the hospital. When Joe saw his brother, he was bleeding from all over and was unconscious. Joe drove Walter to the John A. Andrew Memorial Hospital. This was the black hospital on Tuskegee University's campus. Walter arrived around 9 p.m. and was treated by Dr. John A. Kinney, who was the medical director and chief surgeon at the hospital. Dr. Kinney diagnosed Walter with having a fracture to his leg and was bleeding out of both of his ears. Walter's brother Joe quickly left to go and get their parents. Walter's wife Sally thought that he had been taken to the jail, so she went there looking for him. When she got there, she found Sheriff Evans and Deputy Fawcett sitting in front of the cafe. They told her that Walter was at the hospital and that he would be fine. Sally quickly left and went to the hospital where she found her husband unconscious. Sally stayed there for a few minutes and returned home to be with their children. She returned the next day to visit him. Sally tried to talk to Walter, but he was still unconscious. Shortly after she arrived at around 8:40 p.m., Walter died. Walter died as a result of being beaten to death. Fawcett and Evans fractured Walter's skull. He never regained consciousness. He was beaten to death in front of his own family.